all failed us. We got two innocent lives that's gone for no reason. Don't do nothing to nobody.
Family members still searching for answers as court documents provide new details in a deadly police shooting that followed the killing of two cousins. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're learning more about the lives lost in a North Minneapolis shooting Monday. Family tell us that 14-year-old Xavier Barnett and 23-year-old Aquame Stewart were killed by their own cousin.
It was 12:41 in the afternoon when the jail doors opened and Eddie Duncan walked out into the cold February air. Less than 3 hours later, two people were dead. One of them was 14 years old, and four children, the youngest just 7, were hiding in a closet, listening to the sound of their family being destroyed. That is where this story begins. Not in a courtroom, not in a detective's office. Right there, in that closet with those kids. Because what happened on February 23rd, 2026, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is not just a crime story. It is a story about every single person who saw the warning signs and did nothing. It is a story about a system that looked a dangerous man in the eyes, handed him back his freedom, and sent him straight home to his family. And two young men paid for that with their lives. Before we go any further, if you believe that victims deserve to have their stories told, and that cases like this should never be forgotten, please take 2 seconds right now. Hit the like button, subscribe to Mistora Crimes, and click that bell. Every notification, every like, every new subscriber tells the algorithm that these stories matter, that Xavier matters, that Aquame matters. It costs you nothing, but it means everything. Now let's get into it. Xavier Vincent Marquis Barnett was 14 years old. He played football on a youth team called Band of Brothers. His coach, a man named Dozie Melvin, described him as disciplined, focused, the kind of kid who showed up when he said he would. 14 years old, still figuring out who he was going to be. Aquame Davern Shaquille Stewart was 23. He was a painter, creative, thoughtful, someone who built things and fixed things and made things beautiful. He cooked for his family. He looked after the younger ones. And on that Monday afternoon, both of them were at their mother's house on Irving Avenue North in the Camden neighborhood, with their grandmother and 4 young children, ages 7, 8, 9, and 10. They were not hiding from anyone. They were just home. Their sister, Deasia Freeman, described the bond between Xavier and Aquame as something unbreakable. She said, and I want you to hear this, that she arrived at her mother's house and found her young nieces and nephews hiding in a closet, and then she found her brothers on the floor. Deasia is the oldest of 8 siblings. And by that afternoon, she had lost 3 brothers to violence. 3, not 1, 3. That number should stop you cold, because it tells you that this family has been visited by tragedy before. That grief is not new to them. And yet nothing could prepare them for what a man they were related to by blood was about to do to them. The question you need to keep in the back of your mind as this story unfolds is this. Who was Eddie Duncan, really? And were the signs there all along? Eddie Duncan, 23 years old, was not a stranger to law enforcement. But here is where it gets complicated. Because on paper, his record was not as long as you might expect for a man capable of what he allegedly did. As an adult, he had been charged with drug possession and traffic violations. As a juvenile, he caught a weapons charge, illegal possession of a handgun. Both the weapons case and the drug case were later dismissed after probation. No felony convictions. Clean enough on paper that the system had limited tools to hold him. But May 17th, 2025, changed everything, or it should have. At 3:26 in the morning, a Robbinsdale police officer pulled Duncan over on suspicion of speeding. What happened next was not the behavior of someone with nothing to hide. The moment the officer approached his door, Duncan floored it. He hit speeds between 70 and 90 miles per hour before losing control of his car. The vehicle flipped. Duncan ran. When police searched the scene, they found a Glock 9mm handgun on the hood of the car. It had an extended magazine loaded with 29 rounds, and it had been fitted with an auto-sear, a modification that converts a semi-automatic pistol into an automatic weapon, making it fire continuously like a machine gun. That is a federal weapon. That is not a man who made a one-time mistake. That is a man who was prepared. An arrest warrant was issued in January 2026. Minneapolis police picked him up on February 15th. Now, here is where the behavior becomes impossible to ignore. Once Duncan was inside Hennepin County Jail, he refused to attend his own court appearances. Not once, not twice, but 3 times in a row. February 17th, 18th, and 19th. 3 days straight. He would not come out of the cell. The jail had to obtain a reasonable force order just to physically bring him before a judge on the 20th. And when he finally appeared, what the court saw concerned them enough that Judge Julia Dayton Klein ordered a mental competency evaluation and appointed a forensic navigator to his case. Think about that sequence. Modified machine gun, high-speed flee, multiple court refusals, social media videos of him dancing with a firearm, calling himself God, a judge ordering a psychological evaluation. Every single one of those things is a flashing red light, and not one of them was enough to keep him behind bars. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office did ask for higher bail than usual, $70,000 or $35,000 with conditions. That request was granted, but the constitutional right to bail in Minnesota meant that once a bonding company stepped in, Duncan was walking out that door. Midwest Bonding, LLC, posted a $35,000 bond on the morning of February 23rd. His conditions of release included a strict prohibition on possessing any firearms or ammunition. He signed the paperwork at 12:41 p.m. By 3:30 p.m., he had a gun, and he was standing inside his family's home. The question the family keeps asking, and honestly, it's a question I can't shake either, is why? Why did Eddie Duncan go to that house? Why Xavier? Why Aquame? Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara stated publicly that family members believe Duncan thought his cousins were responsible for his arrest, that somehow, in whatever was happening inside his mind, he had convinced himself that the people who shared his blood had betrayed him, had set him up, had handed him to the police. But here is what the chief also said. There is no evidence. None. Xavier was 14. Aquame was a painter who cooked for his family. There is no verified link between either of them and Duncan's arrest. The theory, if it was even real in his mind, appears to have had no factual basis whatsoever. And that is the most disturbing part of this entire case. Not just that he did it, but what it suggests about the mental state he was in. When someone reaches a point where they are willing to execute family members over a belief that may have had no grounding in reality, something's gone profoundly, dangerously wrong inside them. The social media posts, the court refusals, calling himself God, taken individually, each one might seem dismissible. Together, they paint a picture of a man in serious psychological crisis who should never have been released before that evaluation took place. Deasia Freeman did not mince words. She said, "They all failed us." And she is right to say it.
They all failed us. We got 2 innocent lives that's gone for no reason. Don't do nothing to nobody.
The system is designed with safeguards, and those safeguards existed in this case. And still, it failed. After the shooting, Duncan fled north to Brooklyn Center. Around 3:55 p.m., roughly 25 minutes after the killings, 911 calls started coming in. A man waving a handgun near businesses on Brooklyn Boulevard, close to an IHOP and a Cub Foods. Minutes later, more calls. The same man near a Wendy's near a school. When Brooklyn Center officers arrived, they found Duncan armed. He fired at them, striking a marked police vehicle. Officers returned fire. Duncan ran a short distance and collapsed. He was rushed to North Memorial Health Hospital, where he died that night. 3 officers, Christian Lawson, Francisco Martinez, and Wahid Gul, discharged their weapons. All 3 were placed on critical incident leave. The BCA collected ballistic evidence from the intersection, the IHOP parking lot, bullets embedded in the restaurant walls, and a firearm recovered from the snow. By nightfall, everyone connected to those few hours was gone or forever changed. Xavier and Aquame were dead. For small children who had been hiding in a closet were now trying to understand a world in which their uncles were there and then weren't. Deasia, already carrying more grief than any person should have to hold, was standing outside her mother's house in the dark, asking how she was going to explain this to her kids. And Sandra Freeman, the aunt of both the victims and the shooter, stood on that same sidewalk and said a thing that no one else had the words for yet. I'm hurt. I'm pissed off. This is all family. Why? That word, family, is what I want to leave you with, because it is a thread that runs through every layer of this case. This was not a stranger. This was not a robbery. This was not a random act of urban violence the way the news sometimes flattens these stories into. This was a man who went to a place where the people trusted him on some level, because that is what family does, and he used that trust as a weapon. Psychologists who study familial violence often point to something called attribution error under paranoid thinking. The idea that when a person's mind is deteriorating, they begin to assign blame to the people closest to them, not strangers, not enemies, the people at the dinner table, the people who share a last name, because proximity becomes evidence in a mind that is no longer anchored to reality. Was Eddie Duncan experiencing that kind of break? The evaluation was scheduled for March 24th. It never happened. We will never have a clinical answer. But the behavioral evidence, the social media, the court refusals, the grandstanding, the paranoid theory about his arrest, suggests a man whose grip on reality had been slipping for some time. And here's a question I need you to sit with, and I genuinely want you to think about this carefully. At what point does a pending mental health evaluation become a reason to hold someone, not release them? At what point do we decide that the constitutional right to bail has to exist in tension with the reality of what we can see in front of us? Because judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys all followed the law in this case. Every single one of them, technically, did what the system allowed them to do. And 2 people are still dead. So where does the responsibility actually lie? Is it the system? Is it the bonding company that posted bail, knowing the evaluation had not happened? Is it whoever filed the initial warrant without urgency? Or does this point to something deeper, a structural failure in how we handle defendants who are clearly in crisis? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And on cases like this, the conversation you all have is just as important as the story itself. Tell me, what should have been done differently? And who bears the most responsibility for what happened to Xavier and Aquame? If this story moved you, if you believe these 2 young men deserve better, please subscribe to Mistora Crimes right now. Hit the bell so you never miss a case. Every subscriber is a signal that stories like this one deserve attention, not just when they make headlines, but long after the cameras move on. We will keep telling them. For Xavier, for Aquame, for Deasia, and those 4 children who hid in a closet and heard the world change. We will not forget.